You know, I have been having some health issues as of late because it's midlife and those things show up. And so I've tried to implement some new disciplines in my life, some new routines in my life that have to do with building my health back up. Nothing major, just midlife means you don't have margins. Physically, your body starts to change, right? But I have noticed that my own personal inner mean girl is really, really loud in the times when I'm trying to make these changes. Can you relate to this? Like I'm trying to implement a different, diet kind of parameters for myself, and I'm changing over. Like honestly, the only exercise I've ever liked my entire life is walking, and I'm really great. I'll do it, but it's clear I'm going to need to do a little bit more strength training and to, make sure that my bones are strong and all of the things, right? Heading into midlife, these are not new things. And if you want any advice on how to best manage your health in midlife, go back to the first 3 episodes of this season 2, because Mary Bushkill taught us a lot about how to manage our nutrition and manage our physical exercise health. Anyhow, I've been having trouble with it. I've been trying to implement some new things. And here is what's happening. I keep slipping, right? I slip back into some of my old habits. I get resentful that I have to make these changes. I start doubling down on some of my old habits that are not great. All the things. Any of you relate to this? Because I'm guessing I am not the only one, right? I know I'm not the only one. I've coached people about this. I've counseled people on this. But that inner mean girl, she's pretty loud right now. And she got me thinking. I did do an episode a while back about change and why it is that we do that slipping back and moving forward and slipping back kind of a thing, and helping you understand and have a little more grace, maybe even be kind to yourself. If you're watching me on the video, I have a Be Kind t-shirt on today because I want us to be kind about the change process. It's hard, effortful hard, not necessarily complicated hard, but almost always effortful hard for us to make significant changes in our life. So if you have ever been stuck where I'm stuck right now, where you keep sliding back into old habits, keep listening today, and maybe you can learn yet again what it is to change, what it is that you expect during change, and how you can muddle through this just like I am.
I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm gonna help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Let's work together to help you love your story.
Are you on my mailing list yet? Because if you're not, you really should be. You want to join at learntoloveyourstory.com. If you scroll down, I'm giving away a freebie for you. Honestly, you know what it is? A free course. I sell online courses, but this is a course just for you. And it's about freeing yourself, letting go of what others' expectations and ideas are for you. You know, that nagging self-doubt in your head, it's usually fueled by your consideration of what others think of you over your consideration of what you think of you. And so I teach you in my video all about what is underlying that kind of self-doubt and how to get out of that conundrum. And I give you a workbook that goes with it that helps you to build the skill sets that you're going to need for that. So please make sure you're on my mailing list, because at the least, you're going to get a free gift. And at the most, you're going to hear about all the things that we're doing on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving and learntoloveyourstory.com. And you don't want to be missing out on any of the new things that'll be coming your way.
Welcome back to Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. Today's podcast is really a reprise of an old podcast that I did in the first season, but I think it's always worth bringing up. In fact, I probably should do this topic at least once a season. Change is hard, it's effortful, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it's frustrating that it doesn't happen overnight. And because of that, we want to make sure that we understand what the change process is. Now, if you went out and just Googled that, you would get a ton of stuff coming your way. And that doesn't actually help you either, because here you are in the midst of change. And like me, you keep slipping back into your bad old habits. And then inner mean girl is showing up and barking at you in your ear. So you don't really need to be looking on the internet for why is it so hard, and then have like 15 different clinicians and 12 different research things say it 5 million different ways. Like, that's not helpful to anybody, is it? No. So I actually, a long time ago, ran across a poem, and I think it breaks down the change process so well. So I'm going to repeat an old podcast that I aired during the first season, early on in creating my podcast here. I talk about this poem and I talk about the change process, and I give you an example so that it can make it more real life for you, right? More applicable for you. So listen to what I had to say back in the day, because it's so applicable even now. And then I'll come back and talk to you a little bit about what you learned. Yeah, change is funny, isn't it? Like, everybody knows in order to have growth and new things in our lives, things will change, but nobody really wants to talk about the fact that change is hard and we're going to have to do it anyway and all the things. I really do think that we get into this myth that, like, we'll just wake up one day and it'll all be where we want it to be if we do all the things right, and that we won't have any discomfort in our change process. And yet, change is all about discomfort. It's all about saying goodbye to things, saying hello to new things, grieving in a way the old things about us, and saying yes to the new things about us. It's all about getting out of our comfort zone of what's familiar. And your nervous system is literally neurobiologically wired to tell you, you're going outside the familiar. So, of course, when we change and leave our familiar things and go into the unfamiliar, we feel uncomfortable. We can feel this in a variety of contexts, and we name it different things. So have you ever had, say, stage fright, going up in front of a crowd, talking about something, maybe actually acting or singing? Maybe you performed or did something when you were a kid. Even if you played sports, pretty much any activity that's going to have spectators kind of brings on that stage fright. And some of us will talk about that like, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm also excited. I'm really, I've practiced this. I really want to do it. I really want to do my best in front of the spectators. That usually gets mostly positives. There are some of us that really, really struggle with stage fright, and then it goes kind of past the point of no return. And anxiety actually, for us as humans, has a quality of actually pulling us together, getting us to be more focused, and increasing our performance up until a certain point. And then it drops off like a cliff. It drops off. So
that stage fright is kind of how we bring together everything that we've learned to do this performance game, whatever it is. And if it stays under that one spot where it goes past the point of no return, it actually enhances our performance. That's what it shows. That anxiety is good. Feeling nervous is good to a certain point because it actually increases our performance. Past that point, all bets are off, right? All bets are off past that point. So all to go back to this really funky idea of change and how we approach change, how we think about change, really sets the stage for our growth in life. What is this change process? This crazy, thing that just feels too big and too scary for me? Well, I'm going to start today with a poem. If you're watching me on YouTube, then you'll get to see this poem, but I am going to read it out loud. If you are not watching me on YouTube and you're listening, you'll just have to listen. So here is this beautiful poem, my loves. All right. This is by an author. Her name is Portia Nelson. I've started to research her. I think that she was is it Bertha in The Sound of Music? Yeah, like the original Sound of Music, like Julia Andrews. Oh my gosh. Whew, girl. Menopause and brain fog it's real. It's the real deal. Okay, so let's read this poem. It's by Portia Nelson. It's called Autobiography in 5 chapters. So chapter 1, I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I am in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's habit. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. So I love this poem. I want every one of my coaching and therapy clients to go through this with me, because to me, I have framed this as one of the best, very, very best ways to talk about the change process. There's many in my industry in psychology. There's a lot of different infographics that you can find on it. Talking to the same principles here, but this poem, doesn't that just oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm done sharing this screen. So don't worry if you're on my podcast, you're just going to get all the same goodies. So I want to start talking about this chapter process and why it happens. Chapter 1 is really about self-awareness. Okay. If you don't know what is doing something that doesn't work for you, you will keep falling in that hole. You won't know. And it'll take for freaking ever to get out of that hole because if you are in that hole, my friends, then you didn't know how you got there, and you certainly don't have the skill sets to get out. It's kind of by happenstance, by luck, that we get out of it. So chapter 2 is a little bit different, okay? Now, in my courses online, I start with building self-awareness. It's always the first course in any of my group coaching cohorts. It's been my first course. It's, up there for you to just take as a course if you want. Because chapter 1, it's really important that we start to build what I would call the tolerance skills for having awareness. So it's not like we are overnight becoming aware of all the things. What we're doing is we're building underneath the skill sets we would need to be able to do that. So for instance, if you were going to say,
create one of those really nice breads where you have to put everything together, but there's like a fermentation process and the dough has to rise. And if it doesn't rise, then you can't, I mean, it doesn't taste great by the end of it. I would say that this is the original mixing, right? So if you want to have self-awareness skills, you do have to do the original parts that are going to underlie everything. And much like exercise of any kind, you got to practice and keep it a practice. It won't work. You will atrophy the skill sets if you're not doing it on the daily. Or, let's start with a couple minutes a day. It doesn't mean like you're having to go to the gym for 60 minutes. It's like, really honestly, there are 60-second, 2-minute, 3-minute mindfulness techniques that you can be doing that are still building the medial prefrontal cortex. So I will use Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. You are going to miss this if you're on the podcast, but if you put your hand into a fist where your knuckles are, that's the front of your brain. That's called the frontal lobe, and it's right behind your forehead if you had it in your brain. So if you kind of tilt your hand up and you see kind of where your fingernails hit the palm of your hand and your thumb is kind of tucked in your fist, if you were to peel up your fingers and point them towards the sky, then you have kind of your thumb in a little circle, not circle, L, I don't know, it's tucked into your palm still. That right there, the thumb, would represent the limbic system. Okay. The limbic system is where all of our emotions come from, among other things. It's the center of our brain where relevance happens and meaning making happens through emotional feel, whereas the frontal lobe is through reasoning thinking. Okay. The brain is meaning making. So all parts of it are going to try to gather data, make meaning of data. There is no one actual part where all of that comes together. All organisms with the brain are making meaning of things and learning things. So all parts of our brain have that capacity, but the difference between the limbic system and the frontal lobe is really feeling and thinking. What happens when we are past our point of no return, to go back to that anxiety helps performance to a certain point and then it drops off? What happens is the limbic system takes over the feeling part of us and makes its meaning, and it's more important than the reasoning meaning. Now, this makes sense in a fight, flight, freeze, survival mode. When you're a gazelle in the savannah, you do not want to get caught by the lionesses, right? Like they are out there hunting and you don't want to get caught by them. So if you've learned that standing in the grass alone, not next to the rest of your herd, makes you vulnerable, that self-awareness then kind of clicks in and you move towards the herd. And most of that is based off feeling. They learn that because they maybe saw somebody else do it wrong or they did it wrong, and then they learn how to do that. They're not thinking about it though, when they're a little bit on the edge of that herd and then they see some rustling in the bushes. They don't need to go, I wonder if that is a lioness, or maybe it's just some other small animal that's making the grass move, or the wind. They don't need to be thinking. They need to be running. They need to be getting the heck away and closer to the center of the herd, so they're not likely to be the one that's picked off, right? Same for us. In that fight, flight, or freeze way, of course, in our brain, like we're not thinking about how to get away from it. We're feeling it and we're doing. Like it's almost instantaneous how quickly that happens. So the medial prefrontal cortex is this really interesting place. And it's the juncture, it's the kind of like the connectivity between that frontal lobe and the limbic system. So again, if you have your fist, your knuckles are your frontal lobe. If you peel up your hand and you're pointing your forefingers to the ceiling or to the sky, your thumb is still curled over. The medial prefrontal cortex is kind of that middle finger. It's the juncture there between where the palm is and then the middle finger begins. But if you fold it back over, right? Like if you put your finger there and then fold your four fingers over that, where it's touching is right behind that frontal lobe. So this is literally the bundle of neurology that connects thinking brain to feeling brain. If you want to be a wise brain, if you want to have wisdom, and those principles come out of dialectical behavior therapy, but if you want to be able to get your hot-blooded limbic system brain to settle down, like simmer down,
If you want that to happen, you're going to have to bring that frontal lobe online, the thinking brain online. And sometimes things aren't threats. They feel like it to our body. Our neurobiology says it's a threat to be rejected socially. But it may actually be a good thing if you think about the people rejecting you are a bunch of a-holes that I really don't want to be friends with. But you can't think that through if your frontal lobe isn't online. And so building up self-awareness is all about building up the medial prefrontal cortex, that conduit between the frontal lobe and the limbic system. And what does that is mindfulness and meditation and contemplative practices. So there's tons of ways to get at that skill building and beef up those neurobiological connections between your frontal lobe and your limbic system. However, it has to be a practice. It can't be a one and done. It is a constant. You have to go to the gym all the time to have those muscles. You just do. You have to be walking all the time to have that kind of fitness. You just do. So chapter 1, right? You fall into this hole. You had no idea it was there. You have no idea where you are, and it takes you forever to get out. Self-awareness is what we do in that category. In chapter 2, we go down that same street. It's real familiar. Like, we can't really stop ourselves. Our subconscious mind is like, oh, maybe I just messed it up the first time. Let's try this again. And this isn't like a one time, second time, third time, fourth time in these chapters. Like chapter 1 sometimes goes on for years of our life, maybe even a decade. Just saying, sometimes we have no awareness and no way to get out for a very long time because we haven't paid attention to our own participation in that suffering. So chapter 2 is really about you're starting to build that awareness. And the antidote to knowing you're doing this to yourself and still doing it to yourself is really to be very compassionate while you data collect. So my next course has always been self-compassion work. I want you to build up your capacity to tolerate seeing yourself do this same thing over and over and over. I know it's tough. Like I feels you. I do. I know it's tough. We do this to ourselves, right? We do this to ourselves over and over and over before we really catch. And even when we've caught it, then we still have to keep doing it over and over because we have to really see the detail of how did I slide into the same street? How were the lights off? Was it dim out? What was happening? Did somebody put some new decorations on their houses and I walked down this street and I didn't think it was the same? I don't understand. So you really have to go through chapter 2 to get all those data pieces. You're going to have to keep doing this to yourself essentially, but doing it to yourself in a self-aware way to really get the data pieces that you need. And so in chapter 2, my antidote or what skill set that I think kind of really is comparable there is compassion. And then what I talk about to, my coaching clients, my regular clients, my listeners, I really want you to see this as a combined skill. So compassionate self-awareness. Stay compassionately self-aware. See it, watch yourself do it, but don't let your inner mean girl get in the way. But if that self-critical mind, that self-critical thinking shows up, starts to get in the way, that's when we double down and go back to chapter 1. We don't want to see that we're doing it to ourselves. So we let go of having self-awareness. We keep just walking into those holes and not knowing how to get out. And it takes forever and it's relentless. And if you're somewhere between 40 and 60 years old, 40, 65 years old, you're in your midlife, you're exhausted by chapter 1. You've been doing a chapter 1 for a hot minute. Maybe you've gotten into some chapter 2-ness, like you're starting to have that awareness. And I promise you, if you're not compassionately self-aware, showing up kindly to yourself, showing up with understanding, oh yeah, I see. So it was because she decorated her house different. That's why I went down this. I didn't know she painted her house red. I thought it was white. No wonder I was down this street. Like you have to have that curiosity and understanding and kindness for yourself in order to start to really pick up on the data points of how am I doing this? How am I doing this over and over? So that's chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 is the absolute toughest chapter. Period. End of sentence. Drop the mic. Chapter 3, without compassionate self-awareness, you cannot get there.
So you have to have built this capacity to just stay curious, to quiet the inner mean girl at least, because without quieting that inner mean girl, oof, right? But chapter 3 is all about really putting into context, why is it that I'm doing this? Why is it this street? Why is it always towards this pothole? Why is it that I still keep doing this? But here is the silver lining of chapter 3. And here is how you know in your change process that you're there. You will hop out of that bitch as fast as you possibly can. So you cannot stop yourself from going down the street and into that hole. You get there, but bitch, you out of there as soon as you figure that you're in there. That's what's way different than chapter 1 and 2. But it is still really hard because your awareness of doing it is pretty much online the entire time. Like you're your narrator in your life. You're stepping back and you're like, oh yeah, here I am. It's the same street. I know this street. I've been down this street a million times. I watch myself. I'm watching myself do this. So let me put this into some context for a second, because I think that sometimes we get a little too abstract with my little chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I have all these ideas swimming around in my head that maybe you don't yet. So let's talk about a behavior that you might want to change. Let's say I'm picking on all of us, but women, tend to draw themselves into a negative behavior of overeating sweets as a compensatory behavior for bad feelings, like you're sad, anxious, depressed. So we feed our feelings, essentially. We feed our feelings. And there's a good reason for it. There's a lot of great serotonin to be released when we have a nice, amount of sugar in our body. If it's chocolate, we even get endorphins. Ah, ha, ha. So these are those feel-good chemicals I believe that I talked about in the first podcast, if you want to go back and listen a little bit more. But these feel-good chemicals are what we're chasing in life in general. And the negative chemicals we're trying to ward against. And so it is actually it's an effective strategy. So what I mean by that is, like, if you just look at the behavior, not judging good versus not good and that kind of thing, it's effective. It will get you some serotonin and possibly endorphins to overeat sweets. What it also gets you is weight. And then you have pressures from culture that tell you how awful you are. There's also really just some disordered eating habits we get into while we hide this from ourselves and from other people. So if you were in chapter 1, you would just not notice that you're doing it at all. You would keep doing it and you would not be able to get, you would like, hey, it's January 1st. I'm doing this. I'm doing my New Year's resolution thing and I'm going to go on this diet. And then you can't figure out how, like, literally on January 7th, you're like, and fuck it. I just, nope, can't do it. So you're in chapter 1, you have no awareness. Chapter 2, you might start to have some awareness. And if you're not introducing compassion, you're going to start to be really hard on yourself about it. So chapter 2, you're standing in front of the fridge and you're like, why am I doing this to myself? I got to stop doing this to myself. Or maybe it isn't in front of the fridge. Maybe you ate half a carton of ice cream the night before and you wake up the next morning and you're super mad at yourself. You're bloated. You don't like it. You have a big zit on your face if you're me, because dairy always gives me nice adolescent acne. It's fantastic in your midlife. So, you're waking up like the next day and then you realize it. And then you're like, oh, I can't believe I did this thing to myself yet again. Okay. Compassion there would look like this. Oh yeah, I did that thing again. I got to stay curious about this. What started that? How did I get there? Dang. That's the thing I did. Okay, I'm only human. I'm going to start over today. I'm going to try to be better and not eat any cartons of ice cream. That's chapter 2 with self-compassion. Chapter 2 without self-compassion is all that self-critical thinking. So chapter 3 is different. Chapter 3 is, I've had a really bad day and I've been thinking about a carton of ice cream since about 8 a.m. Maybe even before. Maybe I was thinking like, a big dollop of ice cream in my coffee, 5, like that'd be great. I'm having a bad day before I have my day. So you're really stressed out. You're stressed out. And now when you're stressed out that you want to have those snacks. And that's chapter 3. So you're like aware through the whole process that here I go again. I'm going to go down that street. I've been thinking about ice cream all day. There is no way that I'm going to keep, no amount of willpower keeps you away from going for the carton of ice cream. At that point, you've been dwelling on it all day or ruminating on it all day. So you're going to go get the carton of ice cream and you're going to watch yourself eat it. And you're going to be narrating that stuff. And so if you're in that self-critical thinking and you haven't quieted that inner mean girl, you could find yourself stopping realizing. You could get back to chapter 1 pretty quick. So you're in that chapter 3, if you can sit there in it and be aware of it and quiet that inner mean girl as much as you can, counterbalance her as much as you can with thoughts like, listen, I'm here, I'm doing the thing. I know I'm doing the thing. I'm going to try and be better about this. I'm watching myself do this. You know what? I'm putting the ice cream down. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm watching myself do this. I'm going to eat a bowl of ice cream and I didn't eat a half a carton. You know what? Win-win. I got out of that hole as fast as I figured it out. That's right. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. I can do this. Maybe next time you'll have frozen yogurt. I don't know. Chapter 3, though, you're in it for a while because you're really trying to get at all that data you collected through chapter 1 and chapter 2 and in chapter 3. All of that is going to be information that helps you with chapter 4. And remember, chapter 4 is just walking around this pothole. So nothing really changes about the whole pattern other than you don't do the vice. So when we get to chapter 4 is really about, I am still in the same cues, the same triggers, the same compulsive behaviors that I want to do, the obsessed thinking about it. Like I'm still there, but I just don't do the one thing that I'm trying to change. So in this example, it would be eating the ice cream. So you would know in the morning, I want to have it with my coffee. I've been thinking about it all day. I know I don't feel so hot. I'm stressed. When I'm stressed, I want to feel better. But maybe, it just maybe you've listened to enough on Learn to Love Your Story that you figured out how to cheat the system. So what does it give me to have ice cream? Serotonin, maybe endorphins. Okay, I'm going to do gobs of self-care that give me serotonin and endorphins. I'm going to do gobs of that stuff because I am going to walk around this pothole. I am not having that ice cream, but I need a something. So I'm going to replace it with something that I choose for myself. I'm going to take that empowered step to choose differently for myself. Okay. And we do that for a long time. But as we do that walking around of that pothole, something starts to shift in our thinking. The cues that used to be such a pull subconsciously into it, they stop having their power. And as they stop having their power, it may be because we're bucking the system. So we're finally looking at these self-empowered choices we can be making for ourselves. We are finally seeing for the first time, I don't have to do that. I do need to make myself feel better. I do. I actually, if I'm this stressed, I got to make myself feel better. But I don't have to eat ice cream to do that. And I don't have to beat myself up if I do have the ice cream. I get to do this whole kit and caboodle a lot different for myself. And over time, instead of walking around that same pothole, what you're going to experience is that your life starts to drift into a changed experience. Maybe instead of talking about how do I manage stress through ice cream, or maybe through another more healthy self-care, maybe what I start talking about is, why in the hell am I this stressed all the time? What's that about? Maybe I go further upstream and I'm going to start doing something different there, because then what will happen is by natural process, you won't be looking down that street anymore. You'll be going down a different one altogether. You'll have changed something up so that the stress in your life has altered. And then you don't need any compensatory not eating ice cream self-care behavior to take care of that amount of stress because you dealt with the stress. Now you're on a different road. Now you're in chapter 5. Now things have changed. All right. So this is a brilliant poem by Portia Nelson that captures that entire change process. And my programs are all built around helping you with that change process. And actually, once we get to the last of my programs I call the new you.
I did the New You program. Really, all I'm talking about is how do you rinse, repeat all of what I just talked about? How do you stay in a growth mindset, open minded, to always building more compassionate self awareness? So, chapter 1 and 2 start to not happen for so long in your life. Chapter 3 doesn't feel so horrible, but it is a necessary evil. And you're into chapters 4 and 5 faster and faster and faster with everything in your life. That is joyful, my friends. Life isn't going to be without stress. Life isn't going to be without things that need to change. Life isn't going to be without transitions. Our kids are going to grow up. Our marriages are going to change. Our jobs are going to change. Our bodies are going to change. Well, they already have. We're here in a very big transition stage, and it's not going to get any different going forward. So the only antidote, the only way to stay joyful and happy and content is to be in a change mindset where you can take it. Doesn't matter. I know what chapter I'm in here. I got this. You have to be rolling in that. And so ultimately, the Learn to Love Your Story program is all about how do I get there? How do I have that growth mindset? And I call that self-love. I call that the solution to everything. Other psychologists may, differ in how they describe this, but I think if we're really loving on ourselves, staying in a growth mindset is super easy. Even my inner mean girl, I can come alongside and be like, girl, I get you. I know why you're here. Simmer down, simmer down. Like, you're just making sure I'm aware that I'm doing this thing again. I hear you. And your loud gong takes away from my thinking brain. So I'm just going to keep you quieter. I'm going to stay compassionate with you, because then I can think my way through, and I'm through to chapter 4 and 5 faster and faster and faster.
I just loved my own podcast. I'm just going to say, and not because it was my podcast. I love Portia Nelson's take on autobiography in 5 chapters. Like, I love the idea that there is this path that we take, and it takes a minute before we can go down a different road altogether. And that's what I'm going to have to do with my health. It's a lifestyle change. This is not just I'm going to go on, an elimination diet for 4 weeks, and then I'm going to add foods back in. I've done that a zillion times. It's not just I'm going to add, instead of 30 minutes of walking, 40 minutes of walking. This is like, I got to do a thing I've never done before. I've got to go weight train. Like, I don't even know where to begin. So yeah. So when you're up against needing to walk down a different road, like, you already know that that's going to be the end of this change process for you. If you don't know chapters 1 through 4 has to happen and are difficult and need your compassion, certainly your compassionate self-awareness, but very much so your compassion, your empathy and grace for yourself, you're going to be in for listening to that inner mean girl. She's going to get loud, and she's going to want to sway you back to before you had that growth edge, to before when you pushed past doing an old thing into doing a new thing. She wants you to go back to the old thing. That's her whole point. The inner mean girl, when she's loudest, you can be pretty dang sure that you have veered very far from anything you've ever done before. And that's why I said in this podcast, like, if it feels uncomfortable, you're doing it right. Change feels uncomfortable. It's that inner mean girl is showing up and hollering because you've wandered way off the pasture and she doesn't like it. Now, you're in the driver's seat. You know that where you're going is the right place. Like, when my nutrition is better in line with what my body needs at this stage in my life, which has changed drastically from when I was younger, when I'm exercising in a way that's in alignment with what my body needs from me at this time in my life, which is way different than when I was younger, when I'm there, I know that's going to be the right place. But that is a different street altogether. And right now, I'm still heading down that same street. I might be avoiding the pothole from time to time, but I certainly, on that sidewalk, it's hard for me to not just go straight into what I've always done up until this point. And that's okay. And when inner mean girl is loudest, what she's really telling me is that I'm on the right path. So I need to come alongside her because I don't want to suffer more. I don't want to listen to what she has to say and get mad at myself. I want to know that her clanging gong is just an indication that I'm on the right path to go down a different road. She's scared. That's why she's loud. She's nervous. She doesn't understand this. She doesn't know this. And she's trying to pull me back to old things. And the way she's always pulled me back to old things is to be mean to me. She knows that it usually works. And sometimes it has on this journey as I've, started to take a new path with my health. But up until this point, I haven't ever had a new road that I've walked down. So this is effortful, and it's okay that she's here clanging in my head because she's just reminding me I'm on the right path. I've got this. My discomfort is sometimes the thing that tells me that I'm doing the right thing for myself. And it's a different way to think about discomfort altogether. But I think that it also helps us befriend our discomfort a little bit, come alongside it a little bit, instead of being always at odds with it. And it certainly can help us from being so mean to ourselves about this whole thing that change is hard. It is effort hard, right? Like it is repetition hard. It is going to take practice hard. Might not be complicated. We know what we need to do, but it definitely takes our effort. It takes our strength. It takes our commitment. And those are things that take time, right? And the magical thinking of our youth that change should just be something that happens overnight. If we're doing it right, we should just be able to yeah, I know better. I'll do better. It's just not how this works. It's not how life works. So if you want to feel like you're thriving in your life, even during change, you do have to center yourself, right? That's one of the reasons I call it a centered life thriving. What I know to be true is that our discomfort is also part of our living process. It's part of us living that life that we want to be living. And in order to feel like discomfort isn't a not good thing, we're going to have to wrap our heads around that's part of our thriving, right? That tells us we're alive. It tells us we're on a growth edge, and it's okay that it's here. So to have your centered life thriving, you will need to lean into your discomfort during change. And knowing this and having a poem like the Autobiography in 5 chapters that Portia Nelson has given us really helps you to configure that differently in your mind, I think, so that you really can feel resolute, that you are learning to love your story, that you are sitting in it, and it's messy, but messy is a centered life thriving. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these 2 crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741. to the crisis text line. You can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.